Now, we just finished talking about corruption. Thank you for staying with us. One of the ways in which this dealt us a big blow is through technology. I remember former President Buhari, I think that was in 2015 or 2016, talking about illicit financial flows and the harm it was doing the nation at the time. So now let's talk about how we can fight illicit financial flows using technology. Now, it's a deep-rooted issue characterized by a complex network of activities, from corruption, tax evasion, money laundering, illegal trade. These flows are diverse and they are pervasive. They permeate quite a number of sectors in our economy. A reported $10 billion has been slammed on the widely used cryptocurrency trading platform Binance. Alero spoke about that earlier. This comes after the CBN governor, Yemi Cardoso, said the bank is concerned that certain practices go on that indicate illicit flows going through a number of these entities and suspicious flows. In case of Binance, in the last 1 year, $26 billion passed through Binance Nigeria from sources and users who we cannot adequately identify. That's a concern.
They have no faces.
Adequately identify. So even if you identify them, it's not adequate enough to hold them. Perhaps that's what he's talking about. Let's have conversations around tech for good, fighting illicit financial flows this morning with Dr. Yele Okeremi, who is CEO, Precise Financial Systems. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Very great pleasure.
We also have the president, stakeholders in Blockchain Technology Association of Nigeria, Obinna Ewuno. Thank you for joining us. He joins us virtually. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Okay. Dr. Okeremi, let's begin with you. Illicit financial flows. Fighting illicit financial flows. Governments after governments have talked about that. Do you think we're sincere in that intention?
It's difficult to answer that question of sincerity, well, other than by looking at results. And sometimes sincerity is not sufficient for achieving results. That's why I said, when you say whether they are sincere or not, I'm asking myself whether it's actually a relevant question or not. And the reason is that a sincerely incompetent person will not deliver results. And at the same time, a criminal who is clever will probably evade results. So I think, yes, it's difficult for me to judge how sincere governments have been about getting
the
these
fact
things.
that we have laws to deal with such a thing is not indicative enough of our sincerity.
So when you talk about laws or you talk about jurisprudence of the reasons why laws are made and all these things, so there are several laws that can be made, and the makers of the law already know ab initio that the laws themselves are crippled because they cannot be executed or they cannot be enforced. So then you ask yourself, what is the need of that particular law in question? All right. And so I think that talking about sincerity is good. We might talk about and sermonize it. But I think let's look at it and bring it to be kinetic and see whether, there are ways people may not necessarily be sincere, but the system guarantees that even when a criminal sits on that desk, the system guarantees that the criminal is bound.
It goes to the exact reason I'm asking that question. Is the system insulated from such possibilities?
The answer is no. Okay. Right now.
So I think you finally answered that question. Mr. Ewuno, let's speak to, you understand all of these conversations. When we talk about illicit financial flows, it usually goes straight to the heart of technology. Now, is it something that you think technology can sincerely do? Dr. Okeremi has spoken to the people element. So the technology is not going to run itself, it's going to be run by people. As we are currently structured, do you see technology standing strongly enough to combat illicit financial flows in our country?
Yeah. Combating illicit financial flow is something that can be solved with technology, obviously. In as much as you may not achieve, say, a 100% sacrosanct system, because there would always be a way that people would find loopholes. So as you are planning on closing the loopholes, there are also people who are working to widen the loopholes, so it is something that has to take on a kind of consistent approach and, participation in. Now, when we look at technology that can be used to fight illicit financial flow, blockchain will come at the top of my list. Not because I am a blockchain practitioner and not just because I am the president of the blockchain industry in Nigeria, but because of the features that blockchain possesses that makes it most suitable for this. Now, one is the transparency, one is the immutability, and one very important aspect, feature of blockchain technology that has been largely omitted over time is traceability. Now, why is it the most suitable? Blockchain runs a transparent system of keeping records, all right? And this transparent system of keeping records is also immutable, meaning that you cannot delete or change it. And it is secured using cryptography. And blockchain can be traced, unlike what people promote out there or maybe misinform that blockchain cannot be traced. No, in fact, blockchain is the easiest system to trace. Why? Because the records on the blockchain cannot be tampered with. So you can always know who is doing what, at when it was done, where it went, and those records are there permanently for you to see. It cannot be removed. So if we are able to achieve a comprehensive data or identity verification system and database management that is put on the blockchain, then building financial infrastructures on the blockchain is the best route to go. And when we have our financial infrastructures on the blockchain, then we know that we have a 99% safe and secure financial structure. So everything that happens on this network, everything that passes through our financial process, we can see it. All right. And it is attached to an identity, because most of the time, the issues with illicit financial flow is we do not know who is carrying out this transaction. There is this record that money moved, all right? And this money moved illegally. But who moved this money? And who do they move this money to? That has also been a very big problem in tracking and curbing illicit financial flow.
So are you saying then, my apologies, Mr. Wuna, are you saying then that one way or the other, we are aware of this technology and we are not using them?
I would say that we are largely unaware, because people have always missed the major components of the technology, and they have focused on the minor components of the technology. What do I mean by this? We have the blockchain technology, which is like a bakery. But if you ask most people what is blockchain technology, they will tell you it's cryptocurrency. And if you ask them what is cryptocurrency, they will tell you it's blockchain. So if somebody is engaging in cryptocurrency, they can tell you that they are doing blockchain, which is not true. Cryptocurrency is just one aspect of blockchain technology. Why is this more popular? Because it is the financial application of blockchain technology. And in fact, in blockchain, cryptocurrency is a part of digital assets. So we have in blockchain what we call digital assets as a sector. Now, inside digital assets, we have securities, we have proof of ownership, which is NFTs, we have digital currency. So you can see that digital assets is a sector in blockchain technology, and cryptocurrency is just one part of digital asset. Okay. But it has been blown to look like it is the entire blockchain system. Okay. But why is it?
Okay, just a second. We'll come back to you, Mr. Iwono. We'll come back to you. Dr. Karami, do you agree with him?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You see, that's the real challenge. Separating the technology from its use. So it's right. Absolutely, blockchain as a technology is right about the principles of immutability. Is right. I mean, because it's based on a simple principle. Fundamentally, it's called linked. It's a linked list of sorts. So everything that happens is linked to its predecessor or its progenitors. So you can actually see the entire value chain. So to a reasonable extent, yes. When you talk about the fact that things cannot be altered, yes, in theory, I mean, all these are there. But there are other technologies that also provide that. But in truth, what he said is correct. However, what has happened is like people understand this technology, and what they are tempted to do is to come with a use case, and the most popular use case, or the one that popularized blockchain, was Bitcoin. And what they attempted to do was to use that technology looking for a solution, looking for a problem, trying to look for how do you use it, and then they took it into payment systems. And then they created the blockchain, and the Bitcoin, which, like Obina said, is actually some form of asset. And, you know, when it was being touted, a lot of information, a lot of misinformation, and a lot of disinformation came along with it.
Doctor, I'm a bit confused now because you just said things cannot be erased.
By the theory of it, yes.
If they cannot be
well, let's
erased.
Not be easily erased. Let's put it that way, yes.
It cannot be easily erased.
Correct.
How, therefore, can technology also not trace the movement?
No, actually, it can be traced.
Sorry?
It can be traced. That's what he said.
Yeah.
So it can be traced. You see, the issue about this, that's why I said when the Bitcoin was being touted, and I have a feeling we were watching a commercial just before this program, and we all laughed at the way commercials are being packaged.
Through technology.
You know, in a make-believe. And there's a way people package their commercials with disinformation. And that's why I said there was information, there was misinformation, and there was disinformation.
About the technology.
About the product, and consequently
in that commercial
technology. No, and that refers to blockchain and Bitcoin. And so, you know, people began to use words that they didn't understand. For example, if you attended I had the benefit of actually deciding, yes, let me attend some of these information sessions. And then somebody will come and tell you, the dollar or the naira is a fiat currency. But the Bitcoin is not a fiat currency. I'm an economist. How do you define fiat currencies? And you say the naira is a fiat currency, the Bitcoin is not a fiat currency. The theory of fiat currency is right, and many people believed it. And many people went along with the fact that, cryptocurrencies are not fiat currencies. Which currency is fiat, if there's a word? What's the meaning of fiat? Fiat currency emanates from the fact that it's a currency that's not backed up by gold. It's a currency that's backed up merely by the credibility of the sovereignty of the country. or the central bank governor, so to speak. And then you say the Naira is fiat, but then you say the Bitcoin is not fiat. What is the security on which it is sitting? So those are the kind of things that happened. And then they began to tell us things like, oh, you can be completely anonymous and stuff like that. And some of these things are not actually true, like I said. So that's why I said a lot of information, a lot of misinformation, and a lot of disinformation. But the problem is this about life. Knowledge is good, but beliefs are stronger than knowledge. When people believe things, and when people belief means you are ignorant actually. There's a level of ignorance about belief. But when people believe things, it shapes their character.
It alters the knowledge that they have.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, ideally, knowledge is supposed to lead to a change in behavior. But beliefs are stronger in changing behaviors. So the beliefs about some of these things made a lot of people take decisions. And a lot of decisions that people took are absolutely irrational.
Okay.
Because there's absolutely no knowledge to back it up.
Obinna, are there specific vulnerabilities within the financial system that technology exploits for IFF?
You repeat that again?
Specific vulnerabilities that exist in the financial system that technology can exploit in IFF.
Illicit financial
vulnerabilities that exist.
Yes.
I think that there are quite a number of vulnerabilities that exist. The mere fact that we do not have a strong data management system in the country is amongst the biggest vulnerabilities that exist. And that is the first point of exploitation. Because if I know that there is no record of this thing and I have the intentions to do wrong, I am going to do it. The one thing that every wrongdoer is afraid of is the record of the wrongdoing. And the only way we can ascertain that there has been wrongdoing is by providing a record of the wrongdoing. Because if you accuse me without an evidence, it is just an accusation. I cannot be held accountable for it. I cannot be held liable for it because there is no record that proves that I had done wrong. So that record keeping system, that data management system is the biggest vulnerability that exists. And you can agree with me that over 70% of our public infrastructure is not yet digitized. We don't have a digital record system. In fact, it is more of the private sector that has implemented a digital record-keeping system. But how can the private sector achieve wide implementation without the public sector, which is supposed to be, in quotes, an infrastructure provider and regulator? So, give you an example. In the blockchain industry, where I lead, we have asked for regulation. We are still asking for it. Because we do not want you to throw away the baby with the bathwater. That the bathwater is now dirty does not mean you throw the baby away with it. The baby is the treasure. So you should be able to remove the baby from the bathwater and then throw the bathwater away, right? And we have not gotten this. What did we do? At CBAN, we designed a code of conduct for virtual asset service providers and members of the Blockchain Association in Nigeria to adopt. And it is compulsory. every single corporate member, every individual professional member of the association had to sign that document. And that document became our self-regulatory guideline, which covers everything in entirety that we are supposed to be doing as practitioners to make sure that there is consumer and investor protection and that the technology is utilized, that we use this technology with the right standards. And so there is no manipulation, there is no exploitation, there is no, sort of, give you an example for things like separating user funds and the system. You cannot mix user funds and your system, because when there is a security breach, you would have not done enough to have protected your users. So you see, we now on our own have implemented regulation, and we make sure that every member abides by it. But if the government has worked with us to design this regulation and implement it, then it becomes even more binding. We wouldn't have a case where there are foreign practitioners who will not be subject to the rules and regulations that is put down by our government to do business within the jurisdiction that our government controls.
Isn't that invisibility itself a kind of vulnerability? I mean, you talked about invisibility the other time. If I can disappear, then I can also choose to exploit the system, can't I?
No, you cannot disappear. Because remember, I made a statement. I said that there is one important component of blockchain technology that has largely been omitted, which is traceability. Remember that the first...
Do I have to have a known identity? Do I have to have a known identity to use this technology?
No.
Exactly.
Everybody on the blockchain system has an identity.
Do I have to? I can have an identity, but do I have to have an identity you know?
Okay, so now that is where the beautiful part of this comes in. On the blockchain, we have the public, we have the private, we have the decentralized and decentralized. Now, there is no how you can finish the point of a blockchain transaction without going through decentralized. So when you come into the blockchain, you are issued a digital identity. Now, the issuance of this digital identity is not for you to be anonymous, but it is a form of privacy protection which every single individual on earth desires. Nobody wants their public records out there, all right? I want to be able, I'm not trying to hide my records, but I do not want it to be out there in the public.
What if I don't, well, Doctor, just a second, Dr. Okrem, what if I don't want anyone to know?
You see, Obida has raised very critical issues. There's an adage in Yoruba land that the only way you don't want anybody to know anything is never do it. That's the only secret. Because no, it's the truth.
It will still come out.
Because even if you thought you were the only one that knew about it, maybe there was just a passerby. And so once two people know about it, it will be known. And you know, that was the thing I hammered on when I said, when these things were being touted in public domain, a number of things were said that were misinformation and disinformation. And he's brought up these issues. Because at that time, just exactly what I was talking about was, oh, people were basking that, oh, this thing will make you anonymous. And that's one of the things that a lot of people saw. And you see, it's brought up very key.
And that is not true, is it?
That's what I call disinformation. because it's not true. However, the challenge here is, and that's why I say, how do we bring use cases that affect our lives? That's what I was talking about, being kinetic. Getting this technology to solve challenges that we know about and bringing out use cases. So a number of the use cases that are popular really are use cases that are creating challenges for sovereign governments. And that's why you notice that some of the use cases, so you see, for example, only yesterday I read that Nigeria is slamming Binance, some $10 billion or something like that. Some other countries have done similar things. Because one of the things that you are trying to say is actually insulting the sovereignty of
nations.
And I don't think any responsible sovereign is going to sit down and allow some of those things to happen. But let's take a look at another side of this. The e-naira is as crypto in currency as any currency can ever be. The e-naira, that's a use case. It's a blockchain use case. It's absolutely same technology. But my opinion is that the e-naira could have been used effectually by the central bank and government to do a whole lot of things. And I can give you my views, for example. So today we are talking about is it cash transfers or something, or palliatives to certain people, and you want the monies to get to them. In my opinion, the best instrument that could have been used for that is the e-naira. And I give you the reasons why the e-naira remains, in my opinion, the best way to do it. Because number one, the e-naira guarantees that it moves, and just like we've said, it's traceable, you can see it, that it moves to the intended person.
Recipient.
Secondly, the e-naira or cryptocurrencies, one of the things that you could do with them is called programmability. Meaning that I can decide that the reason why I'm giving you this money is so that you buy food. But if I give you cash, the cash is yours, and you can do anything you like with the cash. But with the e-naira, I can program that I'm giving you 200,000, but 50,000 can only be spent in specific places for specific purposes. So you see that the blockchain does provide use cases for good.
That can so it can actually be used for budgeting.
Absolutely.
Can be used to assign resources to ministries, departments, and agencies.
Absolutely.
In a way that is traceable and that
immutable.
Is almost immutable.
It's immutable. So, I mean, so those are the issues. But one of the things that I've seen...
My apologies, my sincere apologies, Dr.
Yes,
Kreb. So it's also a good instrument to fight corruption.
Absolutely. And that's what Obina was talking about. But you see, like everything in life, all right, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. But you see, what I've realized about life is that when God created the world, he realized that the world doesn't need more than 0.01% of extremely smart people to make the world really go forward. And he also realizes that there's really no reason. In fact, if you have more than that, you're going to run into trouble.
Confusion.
There will be confusion. So he's created those people. But his intentions are that those people use that superlative capacity that they have to make the world a better place. But of course, it turns out that some of them, just like the question you asked when we started, begin to use the knowledge
for evil.
And they want to use the knowledge only to become bigger than every other person. And so they create contraptions around themselves that actually solve no problem or create no value, and then they sell it to the rest of the people because they know that very many people do not have the capacity to question what they are bringing up. They just follow by social proof. And then they become exceedingly rich, they become exceedingly great, and they actually cause a lot of problems. But every technology, the blockchain technology, excellent, fantastic technology, has limitations, but can be adopted for very many good things. So like I said, the e-naira, for example, I've said this, can actually completely supplant cash in theory and actually in practice.
But you see, we're talking about fighting illicit financial flows.
Yes.
How about the problem of access?
So,
access to the finances that will be flown illicitly. The people who, the average Nigerian would say right now that the people who have access are the people who have, who are in government, who find themselves in a position of power, you know, who can do some of these things. There, of course, there is no doubt that there are some other businessmen and women who are involved. Talk about, you know, young people as well who just wants to get out of the poverty bracket themselves and all of those things. The problem of access to those finances.
So, two things are important. We have to understand one maxim: you cannot trade with yourself. Okay? So once you understand that, it takes two to tango. So when we say people having access to resources, look, even if you had access to all the money in Fort Knox, if you cannot buy anything with it, it's as useless as paper. So it is when it flows that it becomes a current. And the current flows because you have other participants in the value chain. So ultimately, it's going to go to some people. And we are talking about the fact that, yes, it might necessarily emanate from, like you say, people in government, people who have access to certain things. But you see, you know, one of the challenges about crime or criminality is that the reasons why people, or the propensity to commit crime, depends on, number one, whether you are going to be found out. What are the chances of being found out? Number one. Secondly, what are the consequences when you are found out? And most importantly, in between being found out and the consequences, the process of ensuring that there are consequences when you are found out. That's what we call the technicalities. So if you look at it and you weigh it on a balance of probability, and you realize that if I do the crime, I'm going to do the time, most assuredly, it deters you.
But you need to do significant time.
Yes.
That will give you significant deterrence.
Absolutely.
Speaking to consequences there.
Yes.
Coming back to you now, Mr. Wuno, but speaking to consequences, do you think in our touting, I use the word, you know, loosely,
yes,
of our fight against crime, particularly illicit financial flows,
yes,
do you think we have significant deterrence in the consequences?
Absolutely not. Remember what I said, that from the time you are found out, what's the possibility of being found out? That's what we call investigation. And if you looked, I mean, I watched the last segment of this show, where it was said that in some other crimes, before they even come and talk to you,
they have finished the investigation.
In fact, you know you are in for it. So that process of being found out is a gamut. Then the technicalities of enforcement is another gamut. If you have substantial resources, you can frustrate justice in certain crimes. And that becomes an incentive for people to commit crime. And there's a loose joke that happened sometime in my office. That somebody came and said they wanted to award a contract. And the man comes into the room and they say, so how are we going to do this transaction? He said, look, this one, 50% for me, 40% for you, and then 10% for our lawyer. That's 100% of the work. They are not going to execute. It's already taken care of getting a very good lawyer. I mean, and it sounds funny, but this is the way things happen. This is the reality. So there's a way the guy commits a crime, it's even visible to the blind, audible to the deaf, and then the process, the lawyers go, and then there are technicalities, you adjourn the case, And then 20 years, the man is on bail, he's having fun all over. In Paris, he says he's going on a medical, he's suffering from heart attack or heart failure. So those are the kind of things that make crime very lucrative and very attractive.
Okay. And Obinna, quickly, before we go, how can individuals be trained and educated so that they can identify and report suspicious financial activities regarding illicit financial flows? Is that possible?
Okay. Yeah, sure. That is possible. It's something that we would like to encourage all corporate organizations and public sector to imbibe. You know, we already have professionals who are doing this. Let me give you one such example. Nigeria last year inaugurated they launched national blockchain policy. This policy design started way back in 2020, and it took about 3 years to be completed, of which CBAN, the Blockchain Association, was one of the stakeholders that contributed to that draft. And then after the draft, it was signed by the former president, Muhammad Buhari, and it was launched. And then a national steering committee made up of 29 members was inaugurated, including the CBN, the SEC, the NSA, the Army, different government agencies, and of course, we at CBAN, being the representative of the blockchain industry. Now, what is the goal of the government? To implement blockchain, to adopt and implement blockchain technology in the public and the private sector. So we want to see systems being built on the blockchain. We want everybody in Nigeria to start using blockchain. Okay, so what is the challenge that could hinder this? Is the lack of understanding of what blockchain is. So what did we do? We at the blockchain sector started doing wide training, education, and awareness for different government agencies, for the public sector, and of course, urging private organizations to train their people on blockchain technology. Why is it important? Because without that training, we cannot achieve what I call inclusive participation. We are driving two things at the same time, mainstream adoption and inclusive participation. And we can only achieve that when we have done these trainings and understanding. Because how can people use what they do not know?
Perhaps one might also want to begin with that mainstreaming, identify. Just a second. Perhaps a good place to start would be to even mainstream the conversation in the first place. Then other adjuncts such as inclusivity might also be coming into play. But it's a good thing that quite a number of people, things that you both have said, gentlemen, have talked about the fact that this is doable. Number one. Number two, the technology is in-house, is in-country. We're not importing it. Thirdly, the knowledge, if I will go by what Dr. Okeremi said, at least 1% of us already have it, and that's enough. People that need it. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here. Dr. Yeli Okeremi, CEO, Precise Financial Systems, also an economist. Thank you so much for your time. As well as Obinna Iwuno, who is president, stakeholders in Blockchain Technology Association of Nigeria. He also joined us virtually. Thank you so much for your time this morning, and all the best, gentlemen. All right, so we switch now. The times are very interesting.
Interesting is the word.
Interesting is the word. So how do you cope in these interesting times?
Interesting.
Especially
and maybe tough.
Yeah, in a way that doesn't completely alter your lifestyle. That lifestyle beat. That's what we're talking about next.